These are the moments sports-obsessed Australians live for.
Almost take a point. Almost. You take that every time.
But the games we love have become deeply entwined with another national obsession.
First of all, let's quickly check in with Sportsradar.
You've got advertising soaked all the way through it.
Taking their time getting back on side.
Gambling strips more than $20 billion out of the community every year. That's more per person than any other nation.
We're the biggest losers in the world when it comes to gambling. That's not something we should be proud of.
It's all over.
It's rife and it's become so normalised that the rest of the world is wondering what on earth Australia is doing.
The gambling giants have infiltrated the lowest levels of sport.
It is a little obscure that it would happen at this level, I must admit.
South Springvale, Melbourne, Serbia. It's quite extreme, isn't
it? it's way too much.
Do the clubs know that you're here?
No.
Don't get any stats there.
We expose the secretive deals in the big leagues. What do you make of this agreement?
You would have to convert to an incredible source of revenue for the code.
On this episode of Four Corners, we reveal how the global gambling industry is tightening its grip on Australian sport. You can see its influence at almost every level of competition. And there are signs clubs, players and fans have had enough, and change is coming.
Hey, dude, take a photo of me.
Hey, lads. Good night, mate. How are you? That's it. Go on, boys.
South Springvale's been around since '68, formed by Greek immigrants predominantly. A lot of the people that started the club are still part of the club now, so it's got that whole family vibe.
It's game day, and South Springvale Football Club President Jim Simos is anxious.
How's everyone feeling about it today?
Nervous. Always the case when there's a big game on, so it'll be good atmosphere, good game, tough game.
South Springvale's top team plays in State League 1 South East, a 5th grade competition in Melbourne's suburbs.
It is purely an amateur competition. You've got plumbers, you've got electricians, we haven't got a doctor. There'll be 17, 18-year-olds out there because they're part of the club and that's the sort of environment we want to keep.
At the edge of the field, one spectator watches every move.
Yeah, kick off taken now.
You might have been at a local game, seen someone like this and wondered what they're up to.
Oh my God.
He's what's known as a data scout and works for Swiss multinational company SportRadar, which specialises in collecting live data at sporting events.
Stand by. During taken. Away attack.
These live updates are sent to bookmakers, so punters can bet on the game in real time. This is what you'll see if you log on to one of those betting sites.
Home attack.
We found several bookmakers offering bets on this game to millions of potential gamblers in Australia and around the world.
Who would want to bet on this level of soccer?
I don't know. I don't understand it. Being such a small park-time football, really, and that's all it is, just volunteers and kids coming out and having fun. I think betting on amateur football altogether, just probably not on.
Here's the odds.
One of the biggest bookmakers, Bet365, is offering all kinds of bets on this match.
You can bet on everything. You can bet on who's going to be leading at halftime, full-time, halftime and a draw. I mean, just the detail they go down to here is quite extreme, isn't it?
It's way too much. No, mate. As long as we leave it leading after 90 minutes, that's all. That's all I care about, and that's what all the folks here would care about.
Parents who are here to support their children can't understand how betting is allowed on these games.
Did you have any awareness that there's betting at this level of soccer?
No, not until you told me about it.
What do you think about that?
I think it's so wrong. I think it's really, really wrong. I don't agree with it at all.
Why?
Because this focus should be on fun, enjoyment, watching the game, family, and I think it just would ruin it. Somehow they need to stamp it out.
Out! Good up!
Later, I caught up with the data scout.
Does SportRadar have to ask permission for the clubs to be here?
Permission? I'm not sure.
Do the clubs know that you're here usually, collecting the data?
No.
He doesn't want to be named, but we know he's one of about 5,000 data scouts working for SportRadar.
Do you know much about SportRadar, like who they are and what they do as a business?
I think the Sportsradar is data company and analyze the sports game.
A lot of people think of SportRadar as a sort of a betting data company.
Actually, I don't know about that.
Don't know? Okay.
Yeah.
We were having a look, but the live data from the reserves game and this game was ending up on international gambling sites like Bet365 and lots of other gambling sites like that.
Actually, I'm not sure about that.
Right.
Probably, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I just collect the data and go to my, I send the data to my supervisor.
Even he believes betting shouldn't be allowed on amateur soccer.
If it is ending up on betting sites, like Bet365 and these other betting sites, what do you think about that? Do you think there should be betting on games at this level?
No, it's too low level.
SportRadar declined our interview request. In a statement, it said it's one of several companies collecting data at Australian sporting events. It confirmed the information is distributed to licensed bookmakers worldwide.
There's data scouts working at these games and punching in what's happening, and we have the tools and the formulas, the algorithms to work out the prices.
Former gambling industry insider Prasad Kanitkar knows how valuable sports data is. How dependent are the bookmakers on those data scouts?
Oh, very, very heavily dependent. Yeah, a lot of sports simply wouldn't have gambling on them if it wasn't for the data scouts. Often we don't have live streaming or live pictures of what's happening, so they're our one and only source often for sporting events.
Welcome to the world's favourite online betting company. This season,
He was a trader with gambling giant Bet365 and watched the deluge of live data, which he used to set odds and lure punters. Who are your customers? Is it just Australians or is it a global customer base?
No, it's very much a global customer base. A lot of Chinese customers that are betting on Bet365. It was get as many customers as we possibly could.
Why would anyone want to bet on this level of competition?
Yeah, I don't think it matters to them, to be honest. If you can bet on something, people do. I think to them it is a bit like a casino where they might be just looking at what's on, what they can put a bet on, clicking away on the website and hoping for the best.
I can bet on over 780,000 different games, just like that.
On these suburban games, what kind of volume are we talking about in terms of betting?
Yeah, you'd see like sort of tens of thousands of dollars per minute.
Per minute? On a suburban soccer game?
Yeah, absolutely.
Bet365.
So how much do you think in total would be bet on, say, a suburban soccer game in Australia?
I'd be millions.
Millions of dollars?
Yeah.
And that's just one betting company?
Yep, that's right.
Do you think anyone has any idea about this, that there's this volume of betting on this level of sport?
No, if you're not in the industry, you wouldn't have a clue. Just the pure volume that you see, it's quite shocking. It's extremely profitable, and it's just ever expanding. There's always more sports coming available, more and more leagues available. It's a machine that doesn't really stop.
We are members of Bet365.
Bet365 says only a small number of bets are placed on community soccer in Australia, and the overall amounts gambled on these games are relatively low. It's not just suburban soccer. Other community sports are being targeted too, global gambling companies following their every move.
The opportunity to gamble on anything is very paramount in our society now. So how do you avoid that? How do you hide that? It's almost impossible.
Couple, push! Couple!
It's a Tuesday on Melbourne's outskirts, and this camera is live streaming a club cricket match.
We have some talented individuals. The teams aren't particularly consistent. To suggest it's at the premier level it's a little off that.
Data from the game is showing up on multiple offshore gambling sites. This surprises Maribyrnong Park's president.
I think people are probably a little bemused about why, a fourth division club in the northwest corridor of Melbourne is all of a sudden appearing and having odds available globally to be bet on. So it's very hard to understand how they could possibly judge odds, because they wouldn't be particularly au fait with what's going on.
There's no need for data scouts here. The live streaming device, endorsed by Cricket Australia, captures every moment.
All right, Jesse, cracking shot.
Do you think there could be people gambling on this match watching that live feed right now?
I wouldn't have thought so until this afternoon, until you rang me. I guess nothing's impossible. But now I guess people with an ulterior motive have access to more information in a live sense to see what's going on, and I guess that's live betting in any sport at any level. It is a little obscure that would happen at this level, though, I must admit.
What the club doesn't know is the streaming service that's broadcasting this match is owned by data giant SportRadar.
Some of the players are involved in this streaming. You've got SportRadar in there. Why do you think they want to get into that industry, into the streaming side of things?
Well, it's commercially lucrative, and sports data companies are in demand from bookmakers to provide that data. Globally, there's a thirst for it. People want data to inform their betting.
SportRadar told Four Corners it doesn't supply these live feeds to bookmakers. But authorities tell us they can still be used by offshore gambling companies. Cricket Australia says it's up to clubs to make sure those companies can't access their footage.
Well, there's a lot of resources.
Jason Wybrow leads the match-fixing unit at Sport Integrity Australia.
We can't control the entire world or the internet, but we can work harder.
This new government agency was set up to protect Australian sport from threats linked to doping, match-fixing and gambling.
We certainly can protect the participants and protect our sports. And
just generally about the sports data companies, how much do you think they've contributed to this massive increase in the availability of sport to bet on?
The environment's grown hugely in the last decade. Part of that is because when people bet, they are interested in watching the outcome of their bet. So they are feeding a need, they're using the rapid advances of technology to do that.
Betting technology may be rapidly advancing, but the standard of competition here is truly amateur.
Game's over, fellas, because they can't supply a new ball.
After notching up a big score, Maribyrnong Park has to forfeit because they didn't bring a new ball for the second innings.
Well, the game's come to a very abrupt end. We batted out 20 overs and made a very decent score, and lo and behold, we've turned up without a new ball, which is part of an expected regulation on the association.
How did someone forget a ball?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm yet to get to the bottom of, Pat. Rest assured that that'll be a question asked very shortly. Very shortly.
For SportRadar, live streaming is just the beginning. Executives told a group of investors in March it's using AI technology to supercharge profits.
We doubled down on product automation through the use of AI.
SportRadar was valued at almost $8 billion when it listed on the Nasdaq 2 years ago. It has a gambling market monitoring arm that detects suspicious betting and uncovers match fixing, but its core business is selling data for gambling.
We created live betting, so we created this product. We are the best in the world for this, and we are the biggest in the world for this.
It's backed by billionaire investors, has deals with some of the biggest US sporting codes, and basketball icon Michael Jordan has a stake in the company.
You did great. Hey!
It's clear the company sees a future where every second of play is an opportunity to bet.
Our computer vision technology automatically collected video content and deep data. The seamless automated process allowed us to unlock new betting opportunities like quick bets, micro betting to place bets within the table tennis rally. This is only the beginning with expansion opportunities across the global sports landscape.
This was taking things to a new level.
Sport integrity specialist Catherine Ordway is surprised by these expansion plans at a time when public attitudes towards sports gambling appear to be shifting.
I definitely don't need micro betting, and I don't know who does. People who enjoy betting on sport would say this is a fun new product, perhaps. And if we have the protections around the education and awareness programs so people know that this is the environment and this is what people are making money off of for those players, then maybe there's a win-win. But I just would have thought expanding gambling at all is completely the wrong direction.
SportRadar says it's trusted by more than 200 sporting organisations. It says collecting their data helps detect suspicious betting patterns. SportRadar's commercial dealings with another sporting body expose the dangers of allowing gambling to flourish.
Championship matches have been investigated over suspicions of match fixing.
A core group of players, half of whom are actually about to begin playing at the Australian Open.
All of us here in tennis absolutely committed to stamp out any form of corrupt conduct in our sport.
My bad. Did one go through? So I've been playing professional tennis for probably 10 years now. My highest ranking is probably the ranking I'm at as of this point today, which is about 218 in the world, I think, give or take. Not that I'm that obsessed with the number.
Australian Brandon Walken is taking a break in Tel Aviv between tournaments. He's seen firsthand how low-paid professionals can be tempted to break the rules.
Unless you're at like the pinnacle of the sport, like, you know, the top 100 in the world, you're not making money where it's like life-changing money. I think I just need to get better. Maybe I'll make more money, but I think overall the sport does not pay anywhere near as well as it should. And yeah, it makes it difficult for a lot of people.
His reputation took a hit when he was caught up in a match-fixing scandal early in his career.
I was 18, like I was naive and I didn't know the rules.
In 2013, Brandon Walken was asked to pass on a message to help fix a match at a minor tournament in Queensland.
By the rules, I meant to go straight to Tennis Integrity Unit instead of what I did do, which was pass the message along. In the text message, I said, I don't want anything to do with this. Like, it's your career. If this is the route you want to go down, so be it.
The governing body handed him a 6-month ban. It was suspended, which meant he could continue to play.
I felt like that's hung over my head. I still feel like I won't get a wild card, I won't get an opportunity because of my involvement. It's on me to be more responsible and know the rules, of course, but like, there's always going to be people who are looking to take advantage of people who don't know better, or people who are young, or people who aren't familiar with the rules, or people who like they feel like they have influence over.
When another match-fixing scandal implicating multiple players erupted on the eve of the 2016 Australian Open, the governing bodies of tennis launched an independent investigation.
What we found was that tennis did indeed face a serious integrity problem. The game itself lends itself to manipulation for betting purposes.
Protection is difficult, not least because at many professional matches there are no spectators and inadequate facilities.
British barrister Adam Lewis led the review and found match-fixing was more likely among lower-ranked players.
You have very many young professional players or old professional players on the way out who cannot earn a living at that lowest level. The temptation is, well, I want to make a little bit more money, and then you begin to fix matches.
The panel also proposes
So it was that easiness of the way in which people could slip into low-level match fixing and how that could then develop into something worse that we found most shocking.
Adam Lewis and his team looked at more than 1,000 suspect matches, 85% of them at tournaments with a fraction of the prize money of the Grand Slams.
A lot of the time the courts aren't flat, or the courts are quite dangerous, or the linesmen don't really care to be there. You know, the tennis balls you get are balls that I give my dog.
Adam Lewis linked the growing threat of match fixing to a lucrative deal the Tennis Federation signed with data company SportRadar. Under the agreement, live match data, even from the lowest level tournaments, is fed directly from tennis umpires.
As they record the score of the match, that data is then sold live, being sent automatically by computer straight to a betting company. The problem was with the fact that the data sale at that level was creating betting markets that would not otherwise have existed.
Gamblers could now bet on tens of thousands of low-level tennis matches.
I didn't think that anyone would have any interest in any level of tennis outside of Grand Slams. And then when I realised, there's odds on matches, you know, I'm playing a match in Ipswich and there's odds on this, I was like, how could betting people even figure that out?
Adam Lewis said the solution was simple. Stop SportRadar and its rivals collecting live data on low-level tennis and selling it to bookmakers.
Not only are the players at the very lowest level really underpaid and subject to temptation, but also the officials at these lower levels are also subject to temptation in the same way.
The Tennis Federation promised to phase out live data collection at the lowest level tournaments, but that still hasn't happened.
That's obviously rather disappointing. I think one can also say, in relation to any other sport, selling data at that lowest level, they'll create their own perfect storm, the risk is, that will lead to further match fixing in the same way as seemed to occur at the lowest levels in tennis.
The Federation admits there's still work to do and says it's committed to upholding the integrity of the sport. Since Adam Lewis released his findings 5 years ago, 21 players and 7 umpires have been banned or suspended for match-fixing offences.
Tennis said it was going to try to fix this problem, but it hasn't actually done that. I mean, why do you think it hasn't?
Well, it would appear to be money. You follow the money and then you look at what they say and then you look at what they do. And the sports themselves are captured by the gambling money, unfortunately.
From local games to the major leagues, gambling is more influential than ever in Australian sport. It's changing how many of us watch these games. The big sporting codes know the risks, but can't resist taking their cut. How intertwined is sport and gambling now?
Incredibly intertwined. It's sponsorship of teams, sponsorship of stadiums, integration into broadcasts.
Let's quickly check in with sports.
It's become so ingrained. Sport organisations have become so reliant on the money, they're entirely beholden to gambling companies.
All Australia's major sporting bodies have signed deals with online bookmakers. The details aren't made public, and the sports don't say how much they're worth. We've obtained copies of the deals signed by the AFL, the NRL and Football Australia, and they reveal the percentage the sports earn on every bet made on their events. And for some sports, the riskier the bet, the bigger the cut.
These documents haven't been made public before. They show how tied the codes are to the fortunes of the gambling industry. The NRL earned $50 million last year from this agreement. It takes a 1.2% commission from every bet in Australia on its games, more for riskier bets and gambling on big games like the State of Origin and finals. On some bets, the NRL can take 17.5% of a bookmaker's profit. What do you make of this agreement?
Given the popularity of the National Rugby League, it would have to convert to an incredible source of revenue for the code.
The AFL pocketed between $30 and $40 million, but won't tell us exactly what its deal with the bookmakers is worth. These hugely lucrative agreements give codes control over the betting on their games in Australia and are meant to fund their integrity units. Sports management researcher Hunter Fujak says the nation's two biggest sporting codes don't want the public to know how reliant they've become on these deals.
There's certainly a PR element to trying to manage the publicity around their integration with gambling. And so when we look at the annual reports of our major codes, they really do a good job trying to blur the boundaries to hide, I guess, the exact elements of how involved they are or how integrated gambling is.
The more punters bet on games, the more money the NRL makes, right?
If we talk about overall betting, absolutely.
So they've got an even greater interest in promoting gambling, to have gambling advertising in the sport?
Yes, the sport gambling advertising is very much for attracting new gamblers. Our sport leagues stand to benefit the more there are new gamblers encouraged to gamble and existing punters gambling more.
The NRL says its agreement limits the types of bets available to punters and is designed to safeguard the integrity of the sport.
People can't watch a match without having a bet on. It's rife and it's become so normalised that the rest of the world is wondering what on earth Australia is doing. You've got advertising soaked all the way through it.
Let's get a market update from Sportsbet.
It's no wonder that they are sponsoring sports because it gives you prime time access into lounge rooms across the country. Just the sheer number of betting ads that young people are seeing. They turn on the TVs, they're seeing gambling, they scroll their Twitter, Facebook feed, they're seeing gambling.
Please make sure you have your tickets ready.
The NRL and AFL only allow betting on their top teams, but we've discovered soccer's governing body allows gambling on everything, from the A-League down to amateur matches. And its secret agreement shows it gets a cut from every bet made in Australia on those games. Football Australia wouldn't do an interview or tell us what the deal is worth. Do you think Football Australia should be getting a cut of bets on amateur games, including games where underage players are on the pitch?
Certainly, if they're going to derive income from such low levels of the sport, then certainly one would expect that from an integrity perspective, that money is reinvested to make sure that there's really good measures in place and resourcing in place to ensure that those matches aren't having corruption or match integrity issues.
You have to decide in this moment as a striker, okay? Now, what's going to obviously...
On training night in South Springvale, we tell Jim Simos what we've discovered about Football Australia's relationships with gambling companies. Has Football Australia even told you that they allow betting at this level of soccer?
No. The first thing I'd heard of it was on round 1 this year, that they were gambling on our games. I assumed, obviously, the top leagues. I was totally unaware that it was down to our levels and below. So Football Australia hasn't come to us as a collective and said, hey, be careful of this, be careful of that. It just hasn't occurred at all.
What would you say if I told you that Football Australia actually gets a cut of all bets on your games?
It'd be disappointing that they're doing that. Football Australia want, these relationships, that's fine. It is what it is. Leave it to the professional leagues where they've got the setup, they can monitor it, they need to do what they need to do. From our perspective, I don't think there's no place for it.
I mean, they're treating you like a commodity.
Absolutely. And we have no part of that. We have no choice of backing out of that, which would be great. Just I'd love to just tick us off, don't bet on our games. Put a line through our games. I don't need that pressure. But can it get worse? Absolutely, there is a scope for it to get worse. And we don't want to deal with that.
Gents, how are we? You all good?
Jim Simos has no idea who's betting on his club.
So we'll do that first, so off we go.
Or how to deal with the sudden global interest in their games.
There's been no training on it, there's been nothing at all. So it's left to the club. Being amateur clubs, this is our side gig. This is what we do for fun, this is what we do to pass time. To have everything thrown at us to look after this is just, it's not good enough.
Football Australia says it allows and monitors betting as a deliberate strategy to protect the game from integrity threats. It insists the clubs are kept informed about the risks. What do you see as the risks of this?
Gambling addiction's obviously the big one. We've got 250 odd kids at South Springvale that could be open to this sort of stuff, which is the last thing you want from a club perspective. You know, a lot of these kids could get involved in that sort of stuff that don't understand what the consequences could be. It would absolutely devastate me if one of our kids got caught up in this.
Well, they're more vulnerable for a number of reasons. At community level, it's usually you're just playing for fun. So if somebody came along and offered someone $10,000 to fix a match in some way, whether it was for a goalkeeper to let in a number of goals at a particular time, or for somebody, a referee, to get a red card, or whatever it was, then that's obviously going to be a much bigger incentive than for trying to influence someone with $10,000 in the top leagues around the world.
It's kind of like a powder keg, right?
Yes, it is, because all of those forces coming together just make the risks enormous. And when you don't educate and raise the awareness at those lower levels, people think it's not going to happen to us, and they don't think about what could be happening in their own backyard.
Have a look at that fourth quarter.
The only dedicated police unit set up to tackle this problem is based in Victoria.
It's not obvious to me that they're trying to throw the match, but...
Match fixing itself can be done by targeting vulnerable athletes who don't get as well paid as others. So there's an opportunity there for those that want to try and corrupt matches to target them.
There's lots of interest, lots of betting.
Victoria Police Assistant Commissioner Chris Gilbert sees a growing threat from offshore gambling markets that are beyond the unit's reach.
It is more around what is occurring offshore that is probably outside of our remit that poses more of a challenge. So regulated markets domestically, regulated markets offshore are really quite strong in our view. It's an unregulated market environment that poses the greatest threat.
Even regulated Australian bookmakers have been caught up in match fixing.
Please, mate, you can come to the front door, please.
In 2020, former professional table tennis player Adam Green was charged over betting on fixed Eastern European matches via 10 bookmakers, including Sportsbet, Neds and PointsBet. He pleaded guilty in May. Court documents show he was placing the bets on behalf of a contact in Ukraine and took 20% of the profits. Table tennis has been booming on global betting markets ever since the COVID lockdowns interrupted more popular sports. Even Australia's biggest bookmakers offer gambling on obscure tournaments played in gymnasiums in Eastern Europe.
The tournaments were set up to fill a gap, essentially, so there was no sport taking place at that time globally. It was easier to set up a sports hall and a mobile phone to stream a table tennis match at that time. And there was a demand for people who were actually sat at home wanting to gamble but had nothing to gamble on legitimately.
Kevin Carpenter heads the integrity unit at the International Table Tennis Federation, which is grappling with the sudden global gambling interest in its sport.
Some of the markets where the betting takes place, they're not regulated markets, and that's beyond our control. We're still building a complete picture of the players that have been playing these tournaments, because obviously the records have not always been well kept, the scores not always been available. There's always a risk when they're playing in this sort of amateur or semi-professional tournaments. We know from other sports, we know from other racket sports, from other one-on-one sports, we're not naive in that respect.
Adam Green made more than $50,000 betting on 39 fixed table tennis matches during the height of the pandemic in 2020. Text messages show he was fed details of rigged games by his Ukrainian contact.
500? Yes, this match, but bet 2 minutes before. Okay, try 500? Yes. Come on, best bet we had in a long time.
He's admitted to trying to conceal payments he sent back to his contact.
Over 10k Australian has to be declared. Transfer it in bits.
Green used 11 betting accounts set up in the names of friends and family, and avoided detection until one of the bookmakers picked up on the suspicious betting.
G'day, Adam Green. G'day, I'm Pat McGrath from Four Corners at the ABC. Have you got a sec to talk about the charges involving the table tennis with us for a minute?
Sorry.
Just wanted to work out just some basics about it, if you've got some time.
Adam Green's due to be sentenced in September. Many of Australia's big bookmakers are still offering betting on the tournaments involved in his case.
We've worked closely with New South Wales Police to assist them with this particular prosecution against Mr. Green and his accomplices along the way. It's an example of what can happen. There's a very limited amount we can do as a sport to prevent betting companies, either regulated or unregulated, from offering markets on table tennis around the world. We hope to introduce a licensing system whereby you will have to get prior authorization from ITTF to be able to hold even a national level event that offers any betting. So we then have that visibility.
It's very difficult to control the entire world.
The risks may have grown, yet the federal government body tasked with protecting sports integrity hasn't been given the power or resources to monitor any gambling markets in Australia or abroad.
All of the people who...
Sport Integrity Australia wants a dedicated unit to monitor betting markets, but the federal government is sitting on the proposal.
Does Sport Integrity Australia have all the tools and all the power it needs to do this job?
At the moment, we certainly are playing the role of coordinating and providing added value to those other agencies.
Would it be good to have some more powers, though, to kind of actively monitor these markets?
Oh, that's a question that we will work through as we develop our responses with all of those other partners. So we at the moment are very much in the space of trying to assist the other agencies who have those responsibilities at the moment.
Federal Sport Minister Annika Wells says the government is still considering their proposal to monitor betting markets.
There's a real need to have a bigger vision for our city. We're the fastest growing capital city.
Momentum is building to rein in the influence of gambling on Australian sport.
Advertising to children.
Senator David Pocock and other independents are leading the push for government to crack down on gambling advertising and sponsorship.
I know what it was like to be a young kid who just idolised rugby players, was watching their every move, and yeah, if they were associated with the brand, that would have done something to me in terms of how I related to that brand. So, I think this is a hard conversation when it comes down to sports sponsorship. Even here in Canberra.
The former Wallabies captain knows the clubs and major codes won't give up their gambling windfall easily.
We've got to make sure that it's working. My sense is that people have had enough and they want this dealt with, not with some of the tinkering that we see suggested, but really well thought out, broad reform. These sort of changes are hard, and there's no doubt about that. But I think it's really having these honest conversations and doing what's best for Australians, for our communities.
This is going to be an absolute rip. It is a mouth-watering matchup.
Western Sydney are slight favourites in our match result market.
The market has reacted and backed the Blues.
And we are underway.
If your team leads by 2 goals at any time, you'll get paid out as a winner.
Sport is such a big part of Australian culture.
Let's get a quick update from Sportsbet right now, though.
We love watching sport. It's now becoming about the odds and, the betting side of things. It's everywhere now. And we've left it so long that there's a real expectation that there will be big changes from all sides of politics.
The bombardment of betting ads takes the joy out of televised sports. Worse, they're changing the culture of our country in a bad way and normalising gambling at a young age. Many Australian families have had enough.
On the question of gambling advertising, the language from both the opposition and the government has hardened.
Are you willing to gazump the opposition leader and propose a total ban?
Considering it, got a big agenda there, and we'd contemplate going further.
I feel like it's every new person that turns 18 is looking at an ad and going, oh, the NRL are promoting this betting agency, I better get on and have a bet. I feel like every ad break you're getting either a TAB or a Sportsbet ad.
I know a lot of my mates like to have a punt on the NRL and
Pretty much everyone, really. You know, I'll probably put on a couple multis every week.
I think it was just a cheeky kind of $5 or $10 here or there, but I guess that adds up if you're not controlling it or looking after what you're doing. Yeah. I've seen other mates sort of lose control a little bit. Just those types of betting that probably just prey on addictive behaviour.
Is there too much gambling in sport?
I certainly think it's advertised too strongly, and especially when you've got kids growing up going to games. I think if you choose to bet, then that's on you as an adult, but I don't think it should be necessarily pushed through all media, I suppose, really, whether it's online or on the TV or on the radio as well. Like, it's everywhere.
We've come to midweek training with the Sydney Swans. Along with all the Victorian AFL teams, the Swans have taken a stand on gambling that is at odds with the league.
It's clearly been a shift, certainly from when I was a fan and when I was a boy, and also from when I was a player. I'm not sure what my odds would have been to get over 20 possessions in any game, and I'd never had to think about it.
Tom Harley won 2 premierships as captain of Geelong.
I'm not a punter, I never have been. Now the rhetoric seems to sort of lead towards the odds of the games, and that starts to become the language, and so that's something that's absolutely shifted. It's certainly a part of the industry and certainly part of our game, but from a Swans point of view, it's not part of the way we sort of promote our club.
When you come and watch our home games,
you won't see any sports betting promotions.
As chief executive of the Swans, he's one of the leading faces in a campaign to banish gambling advertising from his club and home ground.
We're a commercial business, we've got assets, and one of our key assets is a clean stadium.
What kind of response have you had from fans and members about this decision?
Yeah, really positive and really supportive of the fact that when they come to the SCG, there is no gambling advertising.
Reclaim the game, be gamble aware.
We have taken proactive measures to remove gambling from our stadium, from our platforms, because we think it's a social leadership position.
But the gambling companies would pay more, right? They'd love to have their logo across the Swans jumper, wouldn't they?
Who knows? Who knows? It's not a conversation I genuinely mean this. It's not a conversation I've ever had. Things that we can control are the people who we partner with, and in saying that, we're respectful of other organisations and entities that go down a different path. We're realistic about that. So, you know, as a club, I'd like to think we've had a history of being able to stand on our own 2 feet, stand up for what we believe in.
Get that same game multi-feeling with Sportsbet.
For the sporting codes that rely so heavily on gambling, breaking the nation's betting habit will come at a cost.
We've reached a point now where we can't really turn back the clock, and it's really difficult to undo those bonds.
How urgent is this to get this right?
Well, it's really urgent. If you think about Australia and the importance of sport to Australians, we want to be a leading nation in the sport integrity space as well as on the field.
Australians lose $25 billion a year gambling. That's the most per capita in the world. We're the biggest losers in the world when it comes to gambling. That's not something we should be proud of. If you've got young kids and you know that this is normalising gambling for them, we're not setting them up for success.
If we don't do anything, we continue down this path, we probably get to a point where 5-year-olds can tell you what 3-1 or $3.65 means if you bet $80. And that might be good for their math skills, but maybe not so good for society.
If this program has raised concerns for you, you can contact one of these services.